Hey everyone, today is August 4th, 2022, and welcome to the SIG Instrumentation bi-weekly. We have, I think, one or two items on the agenda, although it doesn't look like we have an owner for the first item. So does anyone want to talk about the metrics API server?
Who wrote this? Does anyone know?
We talked about it last week, and I think this is a follow-up. It was who was here last week?
Merrick?
Oh yeah, here. Damien, I think, and I had a discussion about it not last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What exactly did you want to follow up about? Like like stability for metrics APIs for.
I think it was.
I remember it now.
Yeah, mostly I think my concern of can we stabilize metrics API when we know that metrics server implementing the current API doesn't scale well enough past a certain size. So do we want to finish an API, but if we later on discover that we need to restructure it because otherwise we can't scale it, we're kind of stuck with it. That was kind of my question, I think.
I don't think we'll be stuck necessarily. Like, even if we stabilize, like we go GA with this metrics API, like we can always come up with a new one later on. Like that wouldn't be an issue. And also, like we have to consider that metrics server is not the only implementer of this API. Like we have many projects that actually implement this API. And yeah, maybe the problem in itself is that metrics server doesn't scale. But maybe other project might scale depending on their implementation. And I don't think that the API itself is the reason why we are having these issues in metrics server.
Well, one thing I would like to clearly define before we stabilize the API is the exact feature coverage. Like right now, there is no like the API definition, like most Kubernetes API definitions, is the types it returns, but we don't impose any like requirements or guarantees of like it supports label selectors, it supports field selectors. You can watch, you can't watch, which for me is an integral part of an API definition, but right now it's not there. And defining these again puts limit on what we might be able to change in the future. But I don't know if I'm expecting too much from the API definition here.
Yeah, I'm not sure we will need that much, to be honest. Like I don't see like the actual use case that we could have right now for this kind of feature.
It's like if you're a cloud provider or like somebody who wants to implement a metrics API provider, and metrics API is, I think, one of the few APIs, except for the cloud provider things, where there's one API and many or possibly more implementers, that we need to come up with some feature parity or something. Like the API can't just be a type definition. We need to be able to tell people, hey, so most things like autoscaling works in your cluster using your metrics API, you need to support label selectors, or you don't need to. So negotiate a contract between the most users of the metrics API and the ones providing it.
We already have some contracts. Like the basis of the API is a contract by itself. Like the only difference is how you handle the data. Like, but the serving of the data is always the same. Like it's up to then the implementer to serve it and to access the metrics wherever they want to access them. But like at the end of the day, it's what we were trying to do when the API was created, because like you can have many monitoring platform as the backend of your cluster. And the API is just here as a middleware to send back metrics from wherever you want to back to your cluster, back to Kubernetes and your autoscaler. I don't think like we need a particular contract in terms of how the data itself should be sent back to Kubernetes.
Well, but that's right now the only thing we have. Right now, the only thing we have is if you send a request to this API, you get back a JSON response in this format, our type definition.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have any like definition of like people can, well, it doesn't support metric server, doesn't support watch, but Kubernetes APIs in general support watch. People might expect that it works or rely on it in one implementation and then it doesn't work in the other one. Same with I think autoscaler relies on label selectors. And
yeah, but
if they don't work.
Metrics API is an aggregated API server, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, endpoints not supporting watch is a thing in Kubernetes. Like you can't watch discovery docs.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's like you can't really expect every endpoint to have watch. I think that would be just a mistake in general.
No, but what I want is if we graduate the API, that we should be, as it's an API that is not implemented by Kubernetes itself, but can be implemented by cloud providers and by metric server and by other components, that we specify at least some, if you implement this API, you should support this. You should not support watch, you don't need to. You should support labeled selectors because everybody needs them for this API.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So yeah, I mean, make it explicit what one should implement.
Yeah, kind of conformance with metrics API, how to be conformant with the API.
Conformance
a while back,
tests.
there was a bunch of like efforts to do conformance tests for all of the types and like to be really explicit about this. Did they ever come to our SIG? Do you remember? They came to SIG Node a whole bunch.
So there's a funny thing about the metrics API thing, which is like, it's almost orphaned at this point. How many people actually like work on it? Like, Merrick used to be,
3. Yeah, I think we're only 3.
Yeah, Merrick used to be one of the big contributors to it, and I think he's basically dropping it. So it's starting to get into like an orphan state. I would love to see it graduated, but we need like owners for it. Like
for the API or for the metric server itself?
Metric server. I mean, like if we want like stuff like conformance tests, yeah, for sure, right?
Yeah, kind of both. And like we're checking if on our end we can have some more people who contribute and own it more. And that's where like these ideas come from, that we don't want to graduate an API that might constrain us in fixing metric server or cause more ambiguity. Like, yeah,
we're happy to have contributors to the project, right? Like we would be happy to get anyone get it into a much nicer state, like especially like conformance. That's obviously a good idea, right? Like just, yeah, I think it's like not even deniable. So like if you or anyone you know wants to jump in on this, like we're happy to like, you know, add people to approvers or to escalate that process, just because like we don't want this to get in an orphan state and we would like owners for it and we would like it to be healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like we have an even bigger issue with like the other API, like the custom metrics API and the external metrics API. Like I'm the only one maintaining them and I'm barely looking at them right now. And they have essentially like the same issue. They've been beta since ages. We have many people relying on them, but like no one actually maintains the actual APIs.
You mean summary API, for example, or?
No. The like you have the resource metrics API, which is the one that is used by metric server. that
Oh, yeah,
only
okay.
serve
Yeah.
like CPU and memory and stuff like that. And then you have like custom metrics API that serve like any kind of metrics about a particular Kubernetes object. So it's like namespace scoped. And then you have the external metrics API that serves any kind of metric. And that's the three metrics API that we currently serve and like support, but we don't have like that many maintainers for those.
Resource metrics was the one from Kubelet in Prometheus format.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No?
Or
Wait, which one?
we're talking
Resource
about
metrics is the one in the Prometheus format from Kubelet, or
Yeah. It's the summary stats API.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a similar problem.
Yeah, so I don't know, like for those who don't know, like from context, my team is GK metrics, so we're scraping all of this stuff, and that's why we're like, okay, we should help maintaining it, and we're checking like how we can
Yes, that would be great.
contribute.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like jump in if you guys want, like if you guys need approvers or whatever, we're happy to like escalate that process and make it faster than the normal timeline. I think the situation right now basically warrants that. So yeah, I mean, like we're happy to work with you on it.
Yeah.
And I think one question from mine is also kind of on like, does the SIG currently have any plans, or like, I mean, yeah, we talk about graduating metrics API, but is there anything on the road you would explicitly want help with or need help with, or like or is it mostly maintenance state?
Damien would know because Damien has been on the hook for
I
graduating the APIs.
Only like the main thing that we should solve is to regroup all the API in the same repository. Like currently we have like the metrics API that is implemented in metrics server. And the two other API are implemented in like a library that we have in Kubernetes SIGs. And it would be great to at least merge all of them into one repository that we could use as a library everywhere. And that would remove dependency to metrics server by like basically all the project that currently wants to support the resource metrics API have to import metrics server, which is not something that we want because it's not a library. And it also prevents like changes in metrics server because like metrics server sometimes breaks all its consumer because like it's not meant to be consumed in any way. So that's one of the major issues that I would think need to be solved. And besides that, yeah, what we really need help with currently is to graduate all these APIs, or at least like see an actual path of update, either like it's by improving the APIs or just graduating the current one and just start thinking about a new API that will like improve the current state. But we really need to do something about the APIs because like it's been like almost like 20 releases or something where since it's still beta and we need to like have a path forward at least.
Yeah. Do we have any like document or
Yeah, there's some
GitHub
issues.
list
There's
with,
some issues. Yeah.
I can send them to you.
Like a GitHub project or like stuff that wants to be worked on that we can pass around and see if we find somebody.
Yeah, I will send them to you.
Thanks.
Okay. I guess we have time for the last option. It's a quick update. Yeah, I'm planning on getting the extension for metric stability in by the next release. I have actually been improving the stability framework with extending the static analysis tooling. It supports summaries now. So basically by extending the static analysis coverage, we can more adequately cover the entire metrics code base, which is going to be necessary if we are going to start linting against alpha, beta, and stable metrics, which is going to be larger in number and a more diverse set of metrics than currently exists. So I've started working on that. Just wanted to update people. It's coming.
Are you planning to submit the CAP for the next release then?
Yeah, the next release. So I am going to start working on it right now.
Do you need help with that? Because I started looking at it like when we discussed that topic, but like
Yeah, I'll share what I got.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I can help you with that.
David.
Okay, I snuck another topic on. For anyone who wasn't here at the very beginning, kubelet tracing got in. So big thanks to Sally for her work on that. Took almost a year for that PR.
So now we have API server, node, and theoretically etcd if we ever version bump.
And theoretically container runtimes already have implemented some tracing. So
now we have like multiple layers of tracing. Should we start working on guides on how people can utilize this?
I think so. I think that hopefully should be part of the documentation for kubelet tracing. There are guides. I think one of the issues is the older version we're on means that it uses an old version of the format. So we probably don't want to publish it too widely until we're able to update the OpenTelemetry libraries.
Okay, so we probably can't advertise this until 1.2.6 then.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still waiting on the etcd update.
Well, etcd, I don't think we can rely on etcd to version bump anytime soon.
Okay.
The state of the etcd community is it's a really bad state right now.
Do you think it would be worth it for us then to ask them to update one of the older release trains, like etcd 3.4, whatever we're on?
That would be a big patch, right?
It would just be a dependency bump for OpenTelemetry.
For 3.4?
Whatever. Another option is, instead of waiting for another minor release, to ask them to do a dependency bump in a patch release. And then
Yeah, but they don't have tracing implemented in 3.4. So you would need to backport that patch, right?
I thought it was in 3.4. Either way, 3.4, 3.5, whatever Kubernetes is.
Yeah, well, the question is, if the kubelet tracing stuff is in 3.4, then yes, we can do your suggestion by asking for a version bump for OpenTelemetry, and that's fine. But if the change isn't in 3.4, I think we're going to be hard pressed to get them to backport tracing changes into 3.4.
So it's 3.5. Do we know are we on 3.5 of the etcd client in Kubernetes?
We're on the 3.5 of the etcd client, but the etcd server needs to be on 3.5.
No. So I'm talking about specifically getting the Go mod version in Kubernetes of OpenTelemetry updated. That's the important piece for graduating these features to beta.
Oh, we should be able to do that. We should be able to do that because we're using 3.5 client, etcd client, I believe.
But yeah, if they're willing to accept that update, then we can get past this because we've been stuck for a few releases.
Yeah, I think we should be able to do that.
And then at that point, the protocol is stable, and we won't have to worry about telling people to use specific versions of the collector or anything.
I have one question. So I mentioned there are two versions, the client version and the server version for etcd. So before in my cluster, because I'm using 3.4, so I just changed the etcd data pod version to a newer version. So does it mean I need to change other things to support etcd tracing? Or that is enough? I just changed the etcd pod version from 3.4 to 3.5.
So 3.5 does have tracing. You have to enable it via command line flags. The only issue is that it doesn't let you control the sampling rate.
Okay.
So
oh, that's not good.
You'll sample 100% of requests to etcd.
That's terrible.
That is terrible. Yep. So I don't consider it usable in 3.5, unfortunately.
We can't fix that in a backport?
It's a new feature. I mean, we could ask again, but
We should fix that because that's basically a bug.
Yeah.
Sampling 100% of the time is a bug.
I think perhaps what we could ask for is to change it from 100% to 0% without making any other changes, because that means that only incoming sampled requests will end up being.
Yeah, that sounds like a bug fix. That sounds like a bug fix.
So that maybe is potentially another way we could address this. Okay,
I like that. I like that idea.
I'll make notes. And Catherine, do you want to collaborate together on working on these?
Yes. Yeah, because I've been using tracing in my cluster now. Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and currently I'm working on and tracing for webhook for the mutating and some webhooks. Yeah. Because I want to see the latency for each webhook and find the webhook which are the slowest, are very slow.
I mean, you can also use metrics for that because we have webhook metrics.
Yeah, but I found that the trace is better because it's a distribution. For example, I see the API latency in the tracing graph. So I can know, okay, so there are several different kinds of API requests, for example, watch and other kinds. So they have different values. For watch, it's very big. So I can see very clear to understand the distribution from this trace data. For metrics, I need to think why some values are very big.
No, but webhooks for everything should be the same.
Yeah, but the trace is easier for visualization to understand the distribution for the latency.
For the entire request latency, maybe.
Yeah, maybe I can share a screenshot later to say, yeah, I think so. Currently, yeah, even I don't know the details about API server, so I know there are different kinds of API server requests. So I can see very clear from the tracing graph. So there are several kinds of tracing. Its value is about over 1 minute, and other latency data is less than 1 second.
Yeah, I mean, you have lists and watches. I mean, yeah, those take a long time. But what I'm saying is, yeah, but if you're looking at strictly the webhook latency metric, the webhook latency metric should be reliable for you to get the distribution of webhook latencies, right? Because webhook latencies aren't going to vary depending on a watch request or a list request, right? Like the webhooks are webhooks, and you don't watch a webhook request, right? Your webhook request always just occurs. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a synchronous request. Yeah, basically.
If your webhook request takes long because it's a watch, then it's not because of the watch, it's because the webhook is broken.
Exactly, but you can tell that from the webhook metric, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like you can just look at the webhook metrics and be like, oh, this one's hitting the top of the distribution. It's probably a messed up webhook.
Yeah, so I think there are several ways. Yeah, if we can correlate these things together, it will be better. So we can first see the tracing graph to know, okay, where have some issue, and then we can see the logs and metrics in that point at that same point.
I mean, I personally disagree. Like I've looked at these metrics a lot, and I personally think if you just look at the webhook metrics and look for values that are top of the distribution bucket, you're basically going to be able to tell if you're going to have a problematic request.
Yeah,
to me, tracing sounds more complicated to look at.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yes. I personally think that the simpler thing is just to look at the webhook metric, but that is me. But yeah, I mean, tracing is nice to look at overall request flow. I mean, yeah, but if you're looking for problematic webhook metrics, I would look at the webhook metric. Okay. I think that's it for today, right?
I think that's it for today. Thanks everyone for joining. Lots of good discussion.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.
Yes, bye.